What's going on, you guys? So we got a fight been booked between Chris Eubanks Jr. and Conor the Destroyer Benn. Yeah, it's going down, man. After all the talks with Conor Benn recently calling out guys like Jerron Boots Ennis and Virgil Ortiz and, guys in his weight class, behind the scenes, a fight between Chris Eubanks Jr. was being made. So at least one to believe that he was doing a lot of this calling out to these guys all of a sudden. Why? Because he already knew he was locked in with a fight with Chris Eubanks Jr. But looking at the fight between Chris Eubanks Jr., who has 32 wins, 2 losses, with 23 knockouts. Chris Eubanks Jr. is arguably a super middleweight, fighting a welterweight. Right? Now, we're not quite sure what the catch weight is of this fight just yet, but it's a catchweight fight. Chris Eubanks Jr. is a middleweight guy. And he's rated number 1 in the WBA, number 2 in the WBO, I believe, and number 3 in the WBC or something like that. So he's rated pretty high as a middleweight. Conor Benn, somewhat the same in his weight class. But for whatever reason, these guys are going to be fighting each other now. They got it titled Born Rivals. And these two guys are sons of UK boxing greats, Chris Eubanks Sr. and Nigel Benn. So, yeah, in my opinion, this type of fight should have happened a little bit later on down the line. However, there is a little age difference. Chris Eubanks Jr. is 32 years old. So, yeah, maybe they wanted to hop on this fight while he still has some prime years in him. But it's a big fight for UK boxing. It really is. The UK boxing has been thirsty for some intriguing matchups. And I guess you could say this is an intriguing matchup. So this is something for UK boxing. This is something for boxing fans in general. But the casual U.S. audience probably won't be too interested in this fight because they don't really know who these guys are. They don't really have a presence here in America. So it's not going to be too big of a fight here, but it will be a big fight there. It's going to be an interesting fight, man. I still scratch my head as to why Eddie Hearn would put Conor Benn in there with Chris Eubanks Jr. right now. Depending on how that fight plays out, he could really damage his fighter mentally or even physically. Chris Eubanks Jr. is a guy who actually be dropping dudes with jabs. So, yeah, and Conor Benn is a smaller man. And if Chris Eubanks Jr. isn't weight drained, I don't really see too much he can really do against a much bigger guy than Chris Eubanks Jr. Chris Eubanks Jr. was fighting a super middleweight, and he was undersized, and guys couldn't really put him away, and he was still dropping guys at that weight. So, yeah, I'm not quite sure the angle here with this fight. Maybe it's just a big money fight for UK boxing, a glamour fight, attraction type of fight. And that's simply what it is. But it is a good fight. But Conor Benn, man, he was doing a lot of talking. Keith Thurman, you was calling out him. And, you did all this talking, but you already had something lined up, man. And this is something that you got to kind of pay attention to when you're a boxing fan. Some of these fighters come out really boldly and call out these other guys that you're like, oh, wow, you want to fight this dude or something. In reality, he has something else lined up behind the scenes. So, yeah, that was the case with Conor Benn and Chris Eubanks Jr. But it should be a really good fight. As of right now, I got Chris Eubanks Jr. winning the fight just really off principle. He's the bigger guy, more experienced guy. Conor Benn is 21-0 with 14 knockouts. So he was still essentially on the rise, and then they kind of put him in this type of fight. So I'm kind of still really scratching my head as to why, but it is what it is. Tell me what you guys think. Chris Eubanks Jr. squares off against Conor Benn at the catchweight October 8th in the O2 Arena in London, England. Like, subscribe, holla at your boy. Peace out.